U.S., the government subsidizes electricity, gas, garbage collection, and other basic utilities. While these subsidies help millions of Americans, some believe that one major service is still missing. In recent years, there's been a growing movement to make the internet free, or at least subsidized, in the U.S. and other countries. And with 4.9 billion internet users around the world going online every day to communicate, work, get information, and more, it's safe to say that this resource is very much a necessity in today's society. But the question remains, is there enough of an argument to actively push nations to invest in Internet for all? Merton Reglitz, a senior lecturer in global ethics at the University of Birmingham in England, believes there is.
So, for instance, we have a right to an adequate standard of living. That also includes housing. And if we have internet access, we have a lot more opportunities to access information on new housing that we might want to rent. There's also healthcare. So digital inequality and lack of digital access has been called a public health issue by some physicians, because online we find many relevant pieces of information on health, but we can also access healthcare.
Reglitz adds that nearly every job nowadays requires an online application, not to mention the millions of people who work from home and require internet. Not having this access can not only harm a person financially, but it can also interfere with the ability to be heard.
Free speech and free information are the most obvious ones, but also free association. So if internet access, we can make use of social media, of websites, of other online forums to post our views and to get in touch with other people. And we can't do that when we're offline. Things that seem very banal to us these days, that we are able to use the internet to get political information, to watch political information on demand, not just entertainment, but politically relevant information. Sometimes if you miss a live stream of something, the information can only be accessed online again. And so in order for you to have adequate opportunities and fair opportunities to get political information on pertinent issues today for us, also for these seemingly small things, internet access is required for people.
While there are several proponents of free or subsidized internet, there are also countless critics. The internet is a great resource for work and school, but can also be used for leisurely activities like watching TV or playing video games. For that reason, some feel that this move would be a waste of government resources.
Why should we pay as the public, as taxpayers, for other people being able to stream Netflix? That just doesn't seem to be important enough. I think there's probably also special interests or kind of, vested interests in exploiting the internet as a resource. If you can make a lot of money with it, then of course providing things for free is such that it might cost you certain profits that you could make otherwise. And that might also be a motivation for some people to say, we shouldn't have to provide this as taxpayers.
In the past, government-subsidized prices have benefited some sectors. The financing of a good or service can help a manufacturer expand or make the cost more palatable to consumers. However, these lower costs can sometimes create demand that companies just can't keep up with. These types of unknowns have made internet companies hesitant to support subsidization. And frankly, the government also has doubts about the hefty cost. According to Forbes, the average price for basic internet is $36 per month. That's over $400 a year per household. While paying all these bills outright might be too expensive to get past Congress, there are smaller shifts that the country can implement to make internet more accessible. One way to do this is to follow what's worked in other countries.
I know in Estonia, for instance, that there is a lot of free Wi-Fi on trains and a lot of other places in society. And that's certainly a model to emulate, because lots of people might not have internet access in their home. It might be difficult to get it to them. But if you at least make internet access free in public buildings and administrative buildings and have free Wi-Fi at hotspots, that helps a lot.
Reglitz adds that Germany is also working to lower the cost of cellular data so people can use it when Wi-Fi is not readily available. At the end of the day, lowering the cost of internet access will naturally increase accessibility. With that being said, the Biden administration has made some strides to do just this. The White House has recently launched the Affordable Connectivity Program as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. This initiative provides eligible households with $30 a month to put toward internet costs. While this is a step in the right direction, this amount is not enough to pay for a high-speed connection. However, Reglitz doubts that the U.S. will fund internet costs more than they already are at the moment.
It's always a question of resources. The government has to spend resources on many, many things. So they need to prioritize, they need to trade off where they can put the money, basically. And so I think a system where the highest, sort of the most modern technology and the highest internet speeds are available for free would require a political decision where the people say democratically, we want something like that. I think that's still if it ever comes about, that's a long way off. So I think there will probably be some base level of provision, as some governments are already trying to establish right now. And people that can afford more will then be able to afford more and buy more. But I think providing everyone with the newest digital technology and the highest speeds will probably be unaffordable for most governments in the near future.
He adds that the most likely scenario would be the government supporting a bare-bones internet plan for free or a heavily discounted rate. Then individuals would have the option to spend more for higher speeds. But with so many concerns on internet privacy and user data being sold, it's uncertain if people would even go for that basic plan to begin with.
It's no good giving people internet access if they get spied upon, if it's easy to manipulate them, if it's easy to trick them or exploit them. How do we protect privacy of internet users? Can you really use the internet freely if you are being followed at every step of the way, where your actions are being recorded and you can't even trace it as well as those kind of companies that do track you and governments that track you can? And I think that's a really, really pertinent question that has to be asked in conjunction with internet access.
Reglitz says that no American should fear using this essential resource due to the risk of being hacked, scammed, or having their privacy invaded.
We give people the right to vote, but we also think they need an education to be able to make informed choices, to make use of that right. I think equally with internet access, we do need to give people, for instance, basic digital literacy training so that they know, for instance, what is a phishing email, not only how to send an email, but what's a phishing email, for instance, or how to use passwords correctly, so we don't make them vulnerable to these kind of attacks. The government also has, I think, broader duties to protect the cyber infrastructure in the country so that people can't become the victims of attacks from abroad or inside the country of these kind of online attacks.
The question of whether or not to subsidize the internet is complicated and nuanced, but it'll be interesting to see how the U.S. and other societies navigate this debate. To find out more about Merton Reglitz and all of our featured guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. For more behind the scenes, check out Viewpoints Radio on Twitter and Facebook. This segment was written and produced by Grace Galanti. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson. Coming up next week.
It was incredibly dehumanizing and demoralizing for the woman giving birth.
Imagine being strapped down during labor, uncovering what female inmates go through when giving birth behind bars. Then,
how do we as people help nature adapt to our changing world? And I would argue there's a few different things we can do.
The fight to slow the extinction of Earth's species. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.